Don't be alarmed. The pitches were not for me to sing, so it's going to be okay. It is wonderful to see you all this morning, and welcome again to our very talented guests. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And what a day, what a beautiful day to remember and celebrate our confirmation and this confirmation class and our graduating seniors as well. We finished today our series of sermons, 3 Simple Rules. And in thinking about this, it occurred to me that often if you listen to conversations, or if you think about some of the words that you may say as well, I know it's true for me, then you can hear people speak of simplicity with a kind of yearning. Isn't that true? That people sort of yearn for things to be simple and imagine a simpler life, a simpler time, a time which may never have actually existed, but still we have this sort of yearning for simplicity. But if we're careful about thinking about that, we know that it is a particular kind of simplicity. It's kind of a simplicity that the Apostle Paul evidenced in his life, a great scholar who studied with one of the best-known rabbis of his day, could write to the Corinthians, "I was determined to know among you nothing but Christ and Him crucified." Simple. John Wesley called himself a man of one book. He was a classical scholar. He possessed a library of books. But he called himself a man of one book. He was referring, of course, to the Bible. What he was expressing is a kind of focused discipline that is simplicity at its best. Thoreau, when he wrote in Walden about the disciplined life, he said, "Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Let all the affairs of your life be 2 or 3, not 100 or 1,000. Don't count them 1,000,000, but 6. Simplicity. But it's a particular kind of simplicity, isn't it? It's not a kind of simplicity that ignores the complexity of life and the difficulties of our lives. It's not eyes closed, ignoring the complexities of life. But it is a simplicity that enables us to live with confidence and courage and to face life as it really is. And to deal with life as it really comes to us. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "I don't give a fig about a simplicity that lives this side of complexity, but I would give the whole world for a simplicity that dwells on the other side of complexity." And what he was saying, of course, is exactly that a simplicity that does not take into account the complexity of life is really not much at all, worth much at all. And so John Wesley did not ignore the difficulties, demands, and challenges of discipleship, of following Jesus, when he decided that what the followers of Jesus need are 3 simple rules. And if we follow 3 simple rules, then, and remember those and live by those every day, then we will be faithful followers of Jesus. Do no harm, do good of every possible sort, and stay in love with God. It's that third one that we are talking about today. Stay in love with God. Now think about it. When we love, we give ourselves fully to the beloved, don't we? When we really love, we give ourselves fully to the beloved. It's true with our love for God as well. But that aspect of love is why we chuckle at that old love letter that John wrote to Jane. He wrote to her, "Jane, I love you more than the world. I would swim the widest ocean. I would climb the tallest mountain. I would fight the fiercest battle. I would give everything I have for you. Love, John. P.S. I'll be over Saturday night if it doesn't rain. Think about what that might say to us in our love for God. Do we really mean it? When we speak of loving God, Jesus summed up the law with those scriptures that we've looked at throughout this series. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Do that and you will live, Jesus said. He was quoting the words of the Shema from Deuteronomy, the central affirmation of faith in the Hebrew Scriptures. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart and all of your soul and all of your mind and all of your strength. It really is giving ourselves, all that we are and all that we possess, to God. All of our heart, our emotions, what we feel, all of our souls, that divine spark within us, and that which makes us who we are, all of our passions and our giftedness and our talents and all that makes our personality, our souls, our minds. You know, when Jesus quoted the Shema says heart, soul, and strength. But he quotes it adding that word minds. What he's really doing is combining the Hebrew and the Greek versions of the Old Testament scriptures. But we have both mind and strength in there. We have heart and soul and mind. And so the mind was obviously important to Jesus. The ability that we have to reason, our base of knowledge. And too often today, people want to separate mind from faith. And brothers and sisters, we cannot do that. If we love the Lord our God with all that we are, then we will love God with our mind, bringing to our faith all of the questions and all of our knowledge, whether it's scientific knowledge or literary knowledge or wherever it comes from. We will bring that to our faith as well, and we will love God with that. And then with our strength, that is our ability to act. Our ability to act. Whatever power we possess, that is our strength. This week I was thinking about my own life and the way that I love God, and I was thinking about the people that I have known that have been exemplary in that. And one that came to my mind immediately was a member of this congregation. She has since passed away. But back a number of years ago, when not long after I came, I had a chance to go to her home and meet her, and was in her home more than once. She was homebound. In fact, she was bedridden. She was nearly blind, had very, very little eyesight, just enough really to kind of see movement and shapes. And this is how she spent her time: in prayer, in study, listening to books on tape, listening to the worship services from this church that she received weekly back then on cassette tape, and serving people. And here's how she served. She had a device that enabled her to write. It was a kind of lap board that had a ruler that would slide down the page, and it would click each time it got to a new line. Perhaps you can kind of visualize that. She would write letters of encouragement and welcome to new members of the congregation. She would write letters of encouragement to the people who were on the prayer list, who had been discharged from the hospital. And she would do that one line at a time, painstakingly, moving the ruler down, one click at a time. She loved God with all her heart, because she felt that love. In her voice, you could hear it. In her actions, you could see it. With her soul, with who she was, with her abilities and her talents and what she possessed, with her mind as she continued to learn and to share in her writing and with her strength. She didn't have much strength as we would measure it, but she was very strong in other ways. I think about her on my best days when I'm thinking, well, God, I'll get around to that if it doesn't rain, and I'll take care of that. When I'm sort of being a little bit lazy in my faith and I'm not really putting my heart, soul, mind, and strength into loving God, I think of that saint of the church who really gave it all in the way that she lived her life. Loving God is a series of disciplines. It's coming together in worship regularly. It's the way that we pray as part of our living of our lives. It is gathering with other Christians to share faith. It's partaking in the sacrament of Holy Communion. Staying in love with God is a matter of disciplining ourselves. Is it easy? C.S. Lewis tells about a saint who was asked that question, and she said, well, it's easy for those who do it. What she was saying is that we develop holy habits and disciplines that enable us fully to love God. My friend Jim Moore, who is now retired was the pastor at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Houston, tells the story of a man who had a big boulder in his front yard, and he kind of got tired of looking at it, and so he decided he would carve it into a statue. And so he did. He carved it into what turned out to be a really beautiful and well-crafted statue of an elephant in his front yard. A neighbor said to him, how in the world did you do that? Did you create such a beautiful and accurate rendering of an elephant from that boulder? And the man said, well, it was really quite simple. I chipped away everything that didn't look like an elephant. And Jim goes on in talking about that to say, isn't that the task of our living and our disciplines, to chip away everything in our lives that does not look like the image of God in which God created us? To chip away that in our lives which does not look like the life of Christ to which He called us? Isn't it true that staying in love with God is a means of practicing those disciplines that chip away that in our lives which would cause us to do harm or prevent us from doing good of every possible sort and stand in our way of loving God? Well, I want to leave you with one image. It's in a nursery, a plant nursery. It's a sign that marks the entry into where all the trees are kept. And the sign says this: the best time to plant a tree is 15 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree, today. Now, it may be that we've been putting off some really important things in our lives, those disciplines that keep us in love with God. The commitment and the living out of the commitment to do no harm and to do good of every possible sort. And the best time to do that was 15 years ago, 5 years ago, last week, 2 months ago, whenever it was in the past. That was the best time to do it. But the second best time is today. It's today. So perhaps today, God is calling you to a new level of commitment. Perhaps today, God is calling you to put the past in the past and to live into a new future. Perhaps today, God is calling you to make a commitment of your life and your faith to Christ, to place Christ at the center of your living, and to live in such a way that you stay in love with God. Amen.